Okay, so how to enable UiPath data service is you need to go to manage in your cloud platform, and it's available in your community version. Click on these three dots, edit services, make sure this checkbox is ticked and click on save. And within a couple of seconds, you will have the data service enabled for your tenant, and it will show up over here. And on your left hand side panel, you have the data service. You can access the service through that option or either clicking on this link over here. So as you see in the screen, I already have a couple of entities created here. So let me explain what an entity is in a data service. Entity is something similar to a database table that you see. So any of you are, if you are familiar with databases like SQL, the table is represented here as entity. And with multiple entities, you can create different relationships. And in each entity, you can have multiple fields like this, for example. So if I look at this entity that I created for today's demo, here you can see a whole lot of fields. And we'll see how we can create this. And you can also check for data if data is available. We'll get to that point later. So for today's demo, I'll be using this employee and this onboarding process. Before getting there, I'll show you how to create a simple entity. All you need to do is you need to click on this, create new entity, and give it a proper name. I will say new entity for now. You can also provide a description to properly understand what it does and what data it holds. And once you click on save, you will get a screen like this, where you will have multiple fields already created for you. So these are system built, as you see, and it will basically hold a unique ID for each record. And based on the users, it will have the created by name, the time, updated time, and so on. Also, you can provide access management. We'll talk about that later for each entities. And in the data, you can add data later. So how you can create a field now? And in this entity, if I am to create a new field, you just need to click on create new field, give it a proper name. Let's say first name. So always make sure that you provide a meaningful name, and as a best practice, do not use spaces if possible. Use this kind of format. It will help you in when it comes to the workflows and figuring out things. And also when it comes to the data type, you see multiple data types over here. Number will allow you to hold any type of numerical values. So if you check for more details of this number type, these are values that we see by default. It allows the maximum number of this amount and a minimum of this. And you can also specify how many decimal places you need. Also, if you do not enter any value, you can program it to enter a default value. If I say 0, that means if you do not enter a record, it will by default enter 0. And as a good practice, have a description for each and every field, which will describe what that field contains. First name, something like this. And if I click on save, that field will be listed over here of number type. So I should change the type. So I can show you something else as well. If you want to delete a field, you can simply click on this. Why I'm deleting is I need to change the data type. First name. So I will add it again. of type text, and for text you have the maximum length and also a default value and a description. The required option says whether for each record whether this field is mandatory or not. So I click on save, it will be listed over here. So likewise, you can enter any type of field that you need. So let's explore some data types over here. Number, we already saw that. Yes, no means it's a Boolean. In Boolean, by default, you have only two values, either yes or no. So it shows yes or no over here, but the actual value it contains is true or false. True means yes, false means no. So that's that. And if we explore date time, here there's a additional feature. If you want to hold the entire date, the date and the time, you can have it as no. But if you say yes, it will store only the date part of it. And you can also have a default date value. This relationship is an interesting field. So when you're designing entities, always make sure that you try to create an entity that has a single row per data set. Basically, if you are entering a person's information, in the entity, you can have a lot of information, right? So for example, if the person has two addresses, for example, if you have the address field in the same entity, you need to create two records for that. But if you have the address in a different entity, you can have one record in the person entity, and you can build a relationship in the other entity to this particular entity. So once you select this relationship, it will list you all the available entity types so that you can create references. So we'll take a look at that later. So you can just select one, let's say students, and you just need to specify which is the unique identifier in that entity. For example, in this case, let's say this is first name is the unique identifier. We say that, and clicking on save will create the relationship. And this is another type, choice set, which allows you to create a list of choices that can be used within an entity. You can just click new. I will say department, for example, and you can have any type of choices. I will say HR, finance, like this. Clicking on save. Where is that? So now going here, and this is my choice I created. You can give it a name. I show you how that looks like. And so now if you go to data over here, we don't have any record, but when you're adding, for the department, you see the items we gave. Okay, so likewise, you can also add files for an entity. Now coming back to our scenario, so that's how you create entities. So for our today's demo, I have a small Excel file that has some employee data like this. And I also have some onboarding tasks. For example, let's say I'm going to join a company and they have different procedures to do in each and every department. Like in HR, there are a set of things to do. In IT, you need to provide access control. And in finance, you have to configure whatever the system for payroll. Just an scenario for our demo. And these two data sets are referred or linked by this employee ID. And this is the unique identifier over here. So for this, I have created two simple entities, like what you see over here. In employee, I have all the fields that I created to hold these values. And in onboarding process is the other Excel, where I have the employee ID, the status, and the department. And here, this is the relationship. If I show you this field in this entity is related to the employee entity, and the unique field is employee ID of the employee entity, and it is required. So that's how you build a relationship. But when you're entering data, how will that work? I can show you one in here itself. So if you go to employee, we'll just say age is 30, country, let's say, so first I need to enter this record. This will be the date. Yeah, put it like this. And town is and clicking on save will create a record like this, and you can see that some of the fields are automatically created. And if we go back to onboarding, go to data, and when you try to add, say this for employee ID, I get a drop down, and you can search for the related record in that other entity. And this is the Boolean. So that's how you usually build the relationship. But how we can do this in workflows, we'll talk about that now. So I'm just going to remove all this data.
Hey, Larry, I just have one question. I want to make it a little bit more interesting here. I have a question which is like, what all type of a data I can handle here? Like you showed me a few of the example, but just want to check, are you referring something as only text can be catered? You showed numbers also. Boolean, you were just showing it to me. So I just want to understand that what all type of a data I can play on with. Can I play with?
So over here we have text, number, Boolean, date time, and we have three types over here. Relationship is to build the relationships between entities.
Oh yeah.
Choice set is you have a predefined set of values that are defined. So this is something that I created a couple of minutes back, which we can look at over here.
Yep. And just one more thing, which is a very common question that which I hear from my customers / partners. What all type of files I can work with? Is it only specific with the data files, or is it with any type of file? Like what kind of file I can attach?
I believe, because I have tried this couple of times, and I believe that we can include any type of file, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So it's basically when you're adding the file,
yeah,
you just need to give the file path, and it will upload the file to that.
Yeah.
So
cool. Good to go.
Okay, cool. So we have created those two. And this is our Excel. And getting back to the workflows. So once you open the studio, and if the studio is linked to or connected to the same cloud platform where you have that entities created, going to resources will actually allow you to see all the entities available there. And I just created one, and you only see 4 here. So if you click on refresh, that new entity should show up over here. This is the demo entity. And we can also expand and see what type of fields that it holds and the data type. So how to enter data to these entities? The first most important thing is you need to add a new dependency, which is UiPath data service activities. So you can just search it over here and add it. And once you add that, you will see we will be able to use this manage entities on the top ribbon. And also you will be able to see your data service demo on the left hand side. So once you click on this manage entities, it will list down all the available entities. And all you need to do is you need to select the entities that you need to use. Select that and click on save, and it will add it to your left hand side panel over here. And whenever there's a change to an existing entity, it will show it in a yellow color icon on these changes. And just clicking on save will add all the changes that were made to your workflow. So I already have added that. And these entities will have its own data type. So whenever you are creating a variable of this employee, which we'll be doing now, and this is my workflow. So what I need to do is I need to get data from this employee sheet, add it to the employee entity, and I need to get the data from onboarding task sheet. Based on this relationship, I need to add that data to the next entity we created. So this is my main data set. So I need to get the first record and find its related records from this section, update that. And I also need to upload this same file to that particular row that we are creating, and then move for the second one. So first I'm doing is I'm reading the employee sheet and the onboarding task sheet using simple read range and adding it to two data tables like this. And then this is the part that I wanted to explain. So for us to add data to these entities, we first need to create a data or a variable of this type. Just like you do when you are creating lists, arrays, or data tables. If you remember, sometimes we used to do this for a data table. So it's something similar that we are doing here. So we need to have a variable of this type. So you don't need to look for that particular type in variables when we are creating different variables. Simple thing is we just need to drag it over here and it will create a variable of that type, and you just need to rename it to what you need. And if you're still not satisfied with that, you can also search for that type under browse for types and search for employee, and it will show you that under data service variables. Okay, so we first need to create a variable of that type, and that's how I have done it here. You just need to say new and the name of that. And these are the two variables I have, en employee and en onboarding process. So I'm going to loop through the first data table which is coming from the employee. And I'll be taking the first record, and look here. This is a tricky part. This date is of date time type, as we usually know. But when it comes to these entities, there's a different type. It's showing here as, where is that? Date, but sometimes there can be scenarios where we need to pass in null as well. So when it comes to entities, that data type is going to be a little bit different. It is going as nullable date time. So how to find that is just search for nullable over here, and under system nullable, just provide the date time, and that variable will be created for you. Because just date time variable will not work there, it will throw you an error. So it has to be of this type, and you just need to convert the value in the data table to date using date.parse like this, and assign it to this nullable variable. And then using the variable we created over here, we can assign values to each and every field like this. En employee is the variable I created for this employee, and that dot and control space will give you this list with all the fields available in that entity. So you can assign values based on that. And I have this employee ID, and I'm assigning value to that, the first name, last name, and likewise. So I also have a new field over here. This process file is a file which I need to upload a file. But when you are creating the same record, you cannot upload the file directly. So first, you have to provide the values for all the other fields apart from that file, and use this new variable, new activity, which you see under data service. Under entity records, you get a couple of activities. Create new record is to create a new record in entity. Delete is to delete. And you can also search by ID, query the records, and update as well. So I'm using this create entity record. And in that, I'm selecting what entity I need to use. If it's not showing here, you can click for browse, and under data service, all those entities will be available for you. You just need to select that and click on OK. And you are going to give this variable you created as the input, and it will also return you an output to a new variable. So I'm using the same variable, but you can have a different variable as well. The next thing, so this will create the record in the entity, but now we need to add the file to that created row. So how do we know the row? Is by using this output record. And I'm going to use a new activity that you see under file. So here you can upload a file, download, or either delete. So I'm using upload file to record field, and I'm specifying the entity just like before. Now which record I need to update is identified by this ID field, which means this system build field, not the ID field that we are creating, because this will always have a unique ID. And we specified that, and we specify the field that we need to upload the file. So basically, if the entity has a field of file type, it will show you that over there. And just give the file path and get the output record again. So that will create the full record for employee entity. And my second part is I need to add the records to the second entity using this one. So I need to filter these records using the employee ID of the first record of this and get that rows and update in the next entity. So again, I'm using a for each row along with this filter data table. And I'm doing the same thing. So to create the relationship in the second entity, we have this employee ID. So you can see the type it's showing as employee because it's a relationship field. And how to build the relationship is using the output of this activity, create new record. You just need to specify this output variable over there so that it knows that this is the row that you're referring to. And then pass the field you need, just like before, and create the new record. So that's how you need to add new rows. So I'll just close this and show you how to create that. And once we run this, so you can see it's adding the records to the entities. And if we go back to this employee entity, go to data, and now you see the records. So this is the record we added a couple of minutes back manually. And these are the two records I added later through the workflow. And you can see the file is also available. And you can also download, or you can change, remove, or have all those options. And going to this second one, here are the data. And you can see how the relationship is built. It gives the ID of that entity. So how can we update a record? So let's say I want to update this particular record with the status yes using a workflow. So I have built a very, very simple workflow for that. So what I have here is I'm just searching for the employee, which I need to update. And based on the input I get using the input dialog, I will search for that particular record in the entity and extract that using query entity records activity. So again, you can find that over here, query entity records. So now the name is in the entity employee, and I need to find the status which says no in the onboarding process entity. So how to do both is by querying the second entity onboarding process, because using this onboarding process entity will allow you to access the fields of both entities. So over here, what you see here, employee ID.age, ID.country are referring to the fields available in the employee. And the fields without that prefix, like the task status, department, are the fields of onboarding process. So with that, I can look for records task status as false and the name from the other entity using the variable that I get from the input dialog. So doing this filter will actually give you a list of that particular data type, and you can easily use a for each to loop through that to access each and every record. So I'm using again a simple input dialog to show whether you need to update the status or not. And if it's the status, if the user marks it as complete, I will update the status using true. Again, how to identify the row that we need to update is using the ID field of this particular record that we are looking, because it's a list. And you can use the update entity record with that and update the workflow. So if I run this, I should get input dialog. So I will say, I need to find this guy, and it will query, and it will give you the two departments that has the status as known. And I will say complete for this one for HR, and I will say complete for IT as well. And that should update the status over here. If I click refresh, you can see that it has updated. So this is how you can use the data services when you are using intermediary data, like Udit explained earlier. When you have a lot of data to be transferred from one process to another, and you come across a lot of access issues, you come across a lot of situations where this data is also exposed to different people and you need to use different file formats, likewise. So using data service will help you to easily do that processing and to allow you to store the data in a secure location where you can also provide access control for different users, as you see over here.
Yeah, thanks, Leru. This is interesting. I have one more question, which is again more on that this is more of a developer side of a view. But how about the end user, the business user, how they are going to access work on it? Is it like they can work on some web application, or some there is an API for that, or maybe somewhere they store the data? How does it work for a business user?
Yeah, for a business user, for them to look at this data,
Yeah.
We can either create a simple app
Yeah.
using UiPath apps,
Okay.
or else we can provide access to users to this same screen through this user management, so that they can look at the data, and they can easily filter as well over here.
Yeah, because I see the scenario, because when we work with the use case scenarios, which I'm thinking aloud, is where you abstract data from one of our application, which may be Salesforce or maybe a Marketo or maybe a website, and then you try to store that information on a local PC where the bot is running, and then you massage the data, you make some schema from there, and then you also face sometimes a challenge that the data size is too big, which sometimes robots are not able to pick it up, or you have some other issues. But I see this product as actually going ahead and catering those needs and fulfilling that you can play with the large set of a data. You can play with just not Excel file there. You can work with more of a data types. Another question which I have here is, does it work with the kind of like a local storage on that server, or is it I am attaching a storage which is on maybe on a cloud like a Azure or a AWS or a GCP, or I am working with some other cloud storages, or maybe what is the right answer? I don't know. So where I'm storing these information, is it getting stored on the same orchestrator server, or I can attach storage? Hey, hi guys. Are you able to hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I lost the conversation somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. So, Leru, I was asking about that where we are storing this information. Since you are showing it this data services on the automation cloud, so I can see that we are storing it on automation cloud, the SaaS offering. But I want to check that can I attach third-party storage accounts such as Azure storage or any other storage to this data service, so that I can have the data living in my control, my premises, because that's one of a critical security concern we hear from our customer and partners. So, what's your suggestion?
Yeah, as I heard a couple of days back, UiPath also has the on-prem version of data service, and we can use that to store the data so that we don't need to use the cloud version. Because again, coming back to your question, I also came across this scenario sometime back where some companies don't actually like to move to cloud and store
Yeah,
the data on cloud. So they always prefer on-prem versions of
correct.
whatever the tool they use. So we can use that version of data service.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that's sometimes give clarity. And one of the question which Ramesh has asked, can he bring his own schema rather than the way you are showing that you are building it? You want to check on that. Can customer can bring their own schema in a data services?
So it's a pre-built one, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so in that case, I don't see option over here to like import anything. Maybe that feature will be available soon. So as of now, we need to create it.
Okay, probably then we consider the feature might not be available at this point for time, but maybe in a roadmap. Ramesh, we have a limited information, so probably we have to check connect one-on-one on this. Okay, we are almost on the top of the hour for the first set of our data services. I appreciate if people unmute themselves for a few minutes, and if they have a question, they can simply go ahead and ask us, and we will give Leheru another 2 to 5 minutes break, take a breathing space and have some water, drink some water, and then get ready for the UiPath apps. But in the meanwhile, feel free to unmute and ask the question.
Hi Udit, very good morning.
Hey, Sahil, good morning.
Finally,
So,
Sahil is here.
Yeah,
yeah, I've been raising my hand following decorum. I was being ignored, so I was like, what is this?
man, you got a ping 101.
But I actually wanted to follow up on the question
Yeah,
on you asked Udit.
yes.
Basically, I have two questions. First is, from what I could make out in all this, it feels very similar to a database, just a more advanced version where instead of somebody making queries in multiple unattended workflows and collecting all that data and then a separate person doing it at the back end
Correct.
with the database, this
Yes.
kind of eases all that out and allows you to do it in an unattended way. Nobody has to monitor that. So that is something I really like about this concept. My what I could not understand is what kind of data other than the Excel and SQL data can I collate together. Is it just a data stream that let's say application number one has data about the invoice, application two has about the finances of the same vendor, application number 3 has some information about some government policies or something like that. So is it something like from all these three applications I basically get all the data and make a central database? And the second part of the question, how do I visualize this data? Like do I have options only like Tableau and Power BI, or are there other ways I could utilize this data for higher leadership, if I need to present this?
I I will park the technical answer to Leru to comment and give it to you. But Sahil, to your second part, um, this is more handling data better way. That's exactly what you are referring also. And you will be able to go ahead and consume this data if it is on a local, then you are storing it on a SQL side of it. So if you are on a SQL side of it, it doesn't matter. It's only an Excel file, or you are working with the database, but you may play around with logs or some other stuffs also. And when you are on the cloud, what I just recently read about is that we also support cloud connectors such as Azure and AWS and others. So you can play on that side as well. When you are on Azure side of a cloud storage, it can be anything.
So
It's just not only Excel files.
the main intent of this entire data service is basically to ease decision making, right, for the leadership. Because if you're getting data for multiple resources, that's what this is for. Or
Yeah.
is there some other reasoning
It's
as well?
absolutely on that side. It's not a primary data for any of the application, but when you are in transit and you are playing between multiple apps, you have a lot of information which you want to go ahead and cater. And that's exactly the data services comes in the picture where you will be able to play around. Application one is generating something, application two is generating something, application three is generating something, and you are either leveraging the local PC
Hmm.
or a local server machine to store the information. But here, the purpose is that can you go ahead and do more intelligent stuff on top of it?
Yeah, and
That's exactly the place.
for intelligent stuff, what I'm getting at is, can I utilize this in some way to get data sets for my ML processes? Let's say, I want to make a new ML process, but as we all know, the main problem is, getting data sets for that. So
Yeah.
can I leverage this in some way to help me get data sets for
Keeping in
various?
mind that we only handle at this point of a time either text, number, Boolean, date and time, relationships, and choice of sets of data. So if that helps you from your
Yeah,
ML
that
source,
that is what I mean. At the end of the day, I just need all this data coming from various sources in an Excel format,
yeah,
compiled, in a way.
yeah.
So how can I achieve that?
At this point of a time, these are the options, but I also see that sometimes if you have this data set ready and you want to rewrite and you want to delete some row and read some column, that's still not in the feature list, which I see is a concern when you are playing with a lot of data.
Data,
So
exactly.
maybe that is one which is coming up in future versions. But I see at this point of a time, it's a between business and a developer,
Mhm.
and a systematic way to handle the data rather than relying on a unstructured slash Excel and slash a temp data.
Mhm.
And sometimes you lose temp data because the size increased to X number of volume, and then you have to increase the compute power of the machine and all that stuff. So you can have the structured approach and you manage that in a better way, is where I see this product, the solution is filling.
Okay.
The other also reason where I feel it is, let's say for example you are working on an application and you have some data which is critical data, which is PII data or privacy data, and you are living and dying on the reliability of that server to protect that data. But what you are doing is taking that control out from that local machine and not keeping that temp data stored over there, and you store it on a storage, the data services side, and then it's in your control, not in a human control from the leak proof perspective. So for example, if I develop something and I left the temp data on that machine even itself and said, hey, rewrite next time when you work on it. But till the time, the second time I run the process, that data is lying on that local machine. So
So
I'm opening,
creating automated backups in a way.
yeah. So I'm opening a thread that if in case if I have an attack, I am exposed to that data might be leveraged for some wrong purposes. So I see this as the reason that one of the reasons why people should consider data services kind of a feature to be more incorporated rather than relying on local machines. Okay,
Thank
we
you.
given enough break. Sahil, we will park your questions if you have. Let's give chance to others if they want to have an answer on some of the questions. Okay, Abhilash has asked very interesting question. What is the size on entity supports? I have no answer. Lahiri, do you know the exact number or some
Um,
ballpark number?
yeah, so in the, sorry. Uh, yeah, so for community version, there are some limitations as you see on screen. For each data service unit, it's limited to grant you 100 MB storage and 500 MB of attachment storage and 1000 API calls.
Yeah,
And what if you want more?
this is community edition, Sahil. So
This is a
probably,
community.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is not a paid version since it's in a preview. Once it's launched, then it will be available from that perspective with the higher number.
All right.
Yeah, in the paid accounts, it will be like 1 GB of data storage or 5 GB of file storage and 10,000 API calls per day, kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay, so Kanya, did this answer some of your questions? What are we trying to achieve using these relationships?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks.
so much for that.
And how does it works on on-prem work? We have till now seen the cloud. Yeah, since it's in a preview, so at this point of time, you have a cloud version, but the moment you will be able to download it and use it on-prem, you may be able to connect to your kind of a SharePoint / network drives and leverage the same functionality. Functionality remains same. Storage is going to be your choice of a storage rather than what is getting pushed here is a cloud storage, which is coming from UiPath here. Pawan has an interesting question. Is this data available via services so that it can be used outside UiPath? As I asked Lehru about it, and he said that you can call out REST API and you can work on a web apps or a forms. So if you have APIs, it doesn't matter whether you're using internal or external. But more, it's my concern to call out is it's for management and usage of the bots. If you want to expose it to the external world, you should use more systematic way to do it, and prefer options are others. But if you want to use it and if you can call API, you have an open policy with the orchestrator, it should not be an issue. Larry, you want to add something on that?
No, I think you mentioned it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I see Manisha is also here, and thanks for your link, Manisha. And about the licensing and the storage, there is a link.
Oh, she just pasted a link for everyone to go ahead and consume on that. Well, that's good too. Oh, that's on the screen as well. Well, thank you. Yeah, so it supports 1 GB, 5 GB of attachment storage. So flexibilities are much higher and you can make up a 10,000 API calls per day. Okay. Okay, with the interest of everybody, we would like to move to the next topic. Lehru, if you are all set and had just a bio break or had a water or drink water, well, we are good to pick it up the next topic.
All right.
Thanks everyone for staying up.
Okay, so next topic is UiPath apps, and this is one of the most popular and very interesting topics from the community. So it's accessible again on the top left-hand side panel. It's apps, and this is the landing page. So this is still in preview, and just like earlier, it will ideally show whatever the apps that are available, and you can simply create one using create new. I will say new app. So the good thing about this is if anyone has, let's say, Vibhav created an app and he wants to share it with me to perform something. So what I can easily do is, what Vibhav can easily do is he can download the app and send it to me, and using that file, it's just a simple .ui app file. You just need to simply use this option and provide the file path, and it will automatically create the app he built so that I can use it in my platform over here. So that's one option. I'm just creating a blank one. And once you create, this is the next page that you get. So what you see on the left-hand side panel is all the elements that you have in this designer in the middle. So what you see on the middle is where you can actually interact and build the application that you're building. You can create different layouts, you can add different elements like text boxes, labels, and many more. And on the right hand side panel, you see properties of each element that's already selected over here. So you can see if I select main page, the properties you see here is for that particular one. And if I select this container, this is the properties for that one. So how to add new controls is using this add new control. Over here you have different types. Input means the different ways apps has options to allow people to interact with the application by providing inputs. It could be a button, checkbox, a date picker, drop-down menu, basically all sort of stuff. What you have in display is the items apps use to display certain data for you. And it could be a list, it could be a nice header saying that this is the app, and it can be an image, a simple label, a list, table, and so. And what containers are is the elements that we use to organize or hold different controls we put in inside that container. So for example, if I want to have a set of text boxes and labels, I need to use a container to hold those. And icons, you have a whole lot of icons that you can use to design your app nicely. So the next thing is when you are designing these apps. So during the past couple of weeks, I used to talk to different people in the community, and they have been, so as you know that this is one of the most interesting tools they have. So everyone is trying out various different things. But when you actually design, you also need to make sure that you follow some good practices in designing.
Lahiru, I just have one question here. Can you give a
Yes.
broad overview about what kind of things you can accomplish with these apps exactly? Like, I know you're explaining how to design them, but in what kind of use cases, somebody can use this? Just a broad example.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. Larry, you want to pick it up? Or
Yeah,
should I?
okay, go ahead. I think.
So, hi everyone. A quick perspective from an app perspective. Think about a scenario: you make a phone call to any of your bank and say that, "Hey, I want to check a transaction which I have made it about a few minutes back." And what the call center agent has to do it is he has to log into the CRM because there is an IVR which has picked up your phone number and shown you the records that, hey, Udit has called 10 times in the past. And then again, he has to open parallelly same time your billing information. Also, along with that, he also may want to go ahead and report a fraud slash any unexpected transaction information. Also might be a possibility that he also have to give some promotions or inform you about renewal or something which is due. So a call center agent or slash a back office agent is all the time playing with three, five, or different applications at the same point of a time. And sometimes these applications also have a legacy. So what we have seen it is from the IBR number which is picked up, can I go ahead and create a simple view for Udit Jain instead of showing him five different screen? Can I go ahead and show him one screen which has the renewal information, his billing information, his promotions, and he do have information about the transactions, and it reduced the time for keeping Udit Jain on a hold by hearing it, hey, sir, let me pull up your account detail. Can you be online for a minute? And then I'm hearing that audio, which nobody likes to hear it. So we want to reduce that time in that kind of a scenario and give you a one view of all these logins. Also, at the same point of a time, if you want to trigger one action, which should trigger five different action or three different action in the applications, then you are working with the open API here, and they can go ahead and do a kind of a job for you. Like look at the screen right now. If you see on the left hand side, it has a customer file, account summary, term deposit, credit card detail, loads. So it might be possible in a real scenario a user, a back office agent, a call center representative has to open these all different applications. But here he has a one single view, and he may be able to go ahead and give a better experience to the customer. So Sahil, does this answer, does this paint a picture for you what this looks like?
Yeah, and from what I can gather, basically it could, make a user-friendly GUI for
That's
users,
correct.
where based on their inputs, multiple workflows, like we as developer make them in the background, they
Yeah.
can get triggered, and the user directly just sees the output,
Yeah.
which can be
So
applied to any task.
in your day-to-day scenario, you might be building those HTML pages at your own. You
Hmm.
may be going ahead and creating those low code. But what we are doing here is with the UiPath apps is first, we are bringing UiPath apps with RPA. So it's purely just not only a low code HTML slash form slash web page, but it's with RPA. And it also integrates with the open APIs and give you a lot of flexibility. That's where it brings more value versus the traditional HTML forms you are creating. But what we have noticed it, since we work with a lot of customers here, we hear them out what are the journeys, what are the bank opening formalities are, and we know that part. So what we are trying to do it is helping those customer by pre-building it and then giving you a ready-made half-cooked thing and say that, hey, customize it the way you want to do it for your job, and then you can drag and drop and play around on that side and make your own version.
Okay, and what I can, is this available on mobile phone as well,
Yeah,
like in future, or is it available now?
yeah, it's available for web and mobile both.
No, I mean, like, can you launch it like an app from the mobile phone
No,
itself?
no, 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 no. It's not a thick app like a.
Because I'm relating it to Power Apps, so I'm just trying to see if it
Ah,
has.
hey, compete in the house. Okay, no worries, man. But yeah, we don't have a thick client which you can download from a store and play it on. But yes, this is being designed for web applications and this is being designed for a mobile to be get catered. Laru, you want to add or did I miss out anything on this?
Yeah, I have a couple of points to add.
Yeah.
So while you were explaining the call center, I also had a simple demo created for that. So this app over here, it's actually a demo that I created to simulate this call center screen that guy who is sitting there and answering the phone for each and every customer will
Sorry if I
get.
stolen your idea, but please
No,
go.
no, no, it's okay. It's one of the common scenarios, right, when it comes to apps. So I have my own thing.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Yeah. So I created this mainly because one reason. I once came across a scenario, this is in a bank actually, where they have a core banking system to handle the core in business stuff like creating accounts, creating term deposits, credit card and loans, all those stuff. But there was a scenario where when it comes to pawning this jewelry and stuff, they had a different application because that feature was not supported by the core banking system. But since they have a different application for that, they also needed a way to synchronize that data between the two applications due to financial stuff. But when it comes to the customer facing scenario, they always had to interact with two different applications to properly identify or see what sort of a customer this is, what sort of accounts he have, what sort of these pawning things he has been doing. And always what I have seen is this call center guy has to have two different applications and look here and look there to properly see his full profile. And these apps allows him, it actually gives him a one screen and he doesn't need to even worry about what sort of applications that are there, like the core banking or whatever the other thing. Because he just interacts with this app and he just types the ID and the robot behind the scenes will interact with all the other applications and get all the data and put it in the screen, and user will not even feel that he is accessing multiple systems. And the good thing about that is these apps allow uh, to interact with these automation processes that you have built, so that it will allow to perform various different things. Like for example, simple options like we see over here, something like we did mention, like blocking or enabling credit cards, resetting passwords. So for this stuff, they while they're on the call, they just need to type and move to different screens. It basically breaks that interaction. So using apps, so you just need to click on simple controls and everything else will happen behind the scenes to make the lives easy. And the other option we have with apps is, because it's a part of the automation, it allows you to interact with many other third-party tools as well, like something like speech recognition. As you see over here, if I click on this, it gives me a speech recognition option. And while I'm speaking to the customer, I can record whatever the thing I'm talking, and it will extract the key concept or the key search I need to do, and it will do the search automatically for you, even without you typing anything. So that kind of features, that kind of power can be brought together with apps, just like Udit mentioned earlier. Udit, anything else by your side to add to that?
Yeah, good. Just go ahead with your content, buddy.
Okay, let me stop this. Okay, coming back to my demo app. Okay, so what I was talking about is the best practices that we need to follow. Because as you see in the other app over here, there are a lot of things on screen. And if you haven't properly used the naming conventions, just like you do in Studio for your variables and those activities, over time, this will get messy and you won't be able to properly locate what sort of element that is by just looking at this. So it's always good to properly rename stuff. You can simply do it by double clicking over here. Let's say this is the login page, and when you're adding a new control, let's say I need to add a text box and a label. Put it like this. So now you can see, now I have a label and a text, but what this text box is, nobody knows. Let's say you have multiple text boxes like this. So it has a number as well. So for you to easily identify what this is, you can have a good name. So this is just again a different way of designing a web application or whatever application that we are creating. So when it comes to the programming side, we usually, when we are coding with C# or whatever the other language, we usually have these best practices. Like when we are working with the text box, we say txt, something like that. So have some sort of a standard around that and have a proper name for that. Something like this, so that you easily know that this is what it handles. And so again, for each of these, we see different properties. Like you can have different styles. You can create margins and you can resize it. And you can also align it in a way that you like. And let's say, and over here, so what I will do is I will create a simple app while we're on the call here. And add a level. And, also, you can resize this as you need. And next thing is, when it comes to these text boxes or whatever the input criteria that you're providing, we can allow or we can configure apps to store that data in a variable. For example, if I want to store the value that I typed over here in a variable, using this value binding, clicking on that gives you a screen something like this. And under app variables, you can create any number of variables you need. I will say user ID. Don't worry about the data type, it will handle that on its own. So just give it a name and drag it over here. And then whatever you type will get saved into this variable. And next thing is, so I will try to replicate a part of this. So I get data from customer name, category, address, and this part. I will show you how to build that. So I have a different process running behind the scenes. So it's a simple workflow like this. So what happens here is it gets an input from the user, the customer ID, and it outputs different values based on this workflow. So you don't need to create the workflows in a different way rather than you're supposed to do when you are dealing with apps. It's just input arguments and output arguments. Just make sure you pass in the inputs using input arguments and return back the output using output arguments. And in the workflow, you can have anything. You can have different actions to interact with applications. It could be anything. So only way of interacting with the workflows is by these arguments. So I will quickly put the stop and I will add this and I will add a label to display the name. I will rename. So these labels can also be renamed over here. So what else do we have? And customer category. I'll put that as well. I'm not going to do everything. I'll just add a couple of things just to show you how this works. I will add a text box to add that. This is, and if you have any input elements that you also want as disabled, you can use this property as well. And now, let's say I want to enter the ID using this text box, and I want to show the name and the category in these two. And that again by triggering a process in the background. So in my process, what I have here, I'm using an Excel file to get that data. So this is a sample Excel that I have. These are the basic stuff. So I'll be passing this ID, getting the name and the category. So this is already designed and it's published in the UiPath orchestrator as a process. Apps will interact with that published process and get the data from you. So how to connect apps with a process is by clicking on this plus sign. You get these features. You can either add a different page, you can connect to a process, or you can add new controls. Clicking on process will show you this screen where it shows you the default orchestrator that you are currently connected to. Or else if you have a different orchestrator that you need to connect, you can provide that information over here and click on next. So I'm connecting to this one. And then in that orchestrator, you have different folders. And I'm just expanding my folder. And this is the process that I have published. So again, you can find it. And if you actually go to orchestrator, let me show you that as well. And so these are the folders that we saw there. And in demos, you go to automation. These are some of the processes I have. So I will just give this. So I'm just selecting the process that I need to interact with. And here itself, it will show what sort of inputs you need and what sort of output it gives. So don't worry about all this stuff because it returns a lot of things. So we are just worried about this customer name and the category as of now. And I'm providing the customer ID through this. And I will select it. And you see here now, under processors, we have that process. And if you actually click on these parameters, it should ideally show the arguments. Yeah, it's over here under results. Okay, so going back. Now how to trigger a process? I'll add a button somewhere here. Say submit. So every element you see on screen has different events. For a text box, usually an event is the text is getting changed. And whenever the value is changed, what you should do is what? And when it comes to a button, you just click it. And whenever it's clicked, what we should do, those are going under events. So for this, I will select the button and go to events and create a new rule. So under rule, you have various different options. You can create if-else conditions. Let's say if something is, you need to perform a condition before doing anything else, you can use if. Else, you can open a new page. You can go to a URL. You can show some messages when you click on that button. You can do a lot of things. And what I'm doing is I'm going to start a process. Okay, so let me show you a different way of assigning values. You see this set values option. This allows you to set values to variables. So in our example, we already did that. So we can do it here as well. We can drag this over here. Oops. Drag it over here, the variable, and I'm going to say from where I'm getting that value in login page. So again, this is why we need to have proper naming. As you see here, we see a whole lot of things. And for us to easily identify our elements, we need to have proper naming for that. So my one is, I have a flag name. So we'll say, oops, ID. And I need to get the value from customer ID. And this will assign the value to this variable. And that is of type string. So over here, you see a lot of data types. So these are some of the types that we can use in apps. And then to trigger a process, you need to go for start process. And we see the process we added. And we drag it over here. And then we get several other options. We can run the process in attended mode, or we can run it in unattended mode. Either way is fine. I go for unattended. Input override is where you map the input parameters. So in the process, we have one input, the customer ID. So I'll drag it over here. From where we are going to get that value is from this variable. So I'm going to look for that variable over here and drag it to this. And it is of type string. And when the process starts, what you need to do. So ideally, the process might take a couple of seconds to run. So it's good to show a message saying something is running in the background. So you can show a message saying, right, it could be of type anything. I will say it's an information type. And it will show for 5 seconds and disappear. And when the process is complete, now I need to show another message. And this is of success. Then you can do the same thing for errors as well. If there's any error, you can show a message or you can perform any other activities. So this is how we configure the process. So this once this runs, it will get the input and give us the data. So the next part is how you map the data it returns to the elements we have on our app. So going to the page, here I need to show the customer name and here I need to show the category. So for that, I go to general. In value binding, this is our process. Expand that, and in that you can find all the output arguments. And from there, you need to find what output argument is going to give the value I need to show here. In my case, it's customer name. And for this, it's the category. And let's see how this works. So you can run it in different ways. You can either preview, you can publish as well. So we use the preview to test out the application to see whether it's working properly. So once you click on it, it will direct you to a different screen. And I'm going to type the ID and click on. So this is my message saying the process is loading. And you can see that it's running here in the assistant. And you see the data over here. And you see the completed message. So that's how you can easily build and connect it to different processes we have in Orchestrator. The other option here is once you actually publish this, so this is again answering one question I got. I think it's, I can't remember the name. Anyway, someone asked how we can use this app, whether it's mobile friendly or whether we can use it as a desktop application or anything. We can use this app as a web application, or there's an option where you need to do a little bit of configuration though, but you can, with that configuration, you can use it as a desktop application as well.
Lyra, what about a mobile application? If I want to launch it as a app in my mobile, is there a workaround for that?
Yeah, so for this one, this URL, so yeah, hold on. Let me get back. So if you go to this properties, share, once you publish it, right? Once you publish, go into general, you get this production URL. You can use this URL in your mobile browser.
Yeah, but then again, it's a browser, right? I'm talking about launching it as an app, independent app in the mobile phone. Is there a way we can achieve that?
Yeah, so we, in the UiPath forum, for example, it is, we can use it in the web browser and we can use it as an app as well, right? It's not really an app that we download from Play Store or whatever the thing, but there is an option where we can add it as a, I think it's in the browser. And what is the, it's extension. Yeah, there was an option for us to get it as an app. I did that for one. Yes, it is. I did it for call center demo, and it actually opens as an app. So you can do the same thing. I cannot remember.
I mean, even here, it's not exactly an app. It's basically a browser opening that.
Yeah, Sahil, this is not a full-fledged a thick application.
Yeah.
It's a forms advanced side. You can say it's a more of a web app, but it's not a desktop experience such as an app.
Yeah.
Not on mobile, not on desktop, but it's a high config, high flexible op.
Yeah, I already understood that, Udit, when you explain it. As Lahira was saying that, there's a workaround for that. That's why I was curious if, through a workaround, we can maybe, use it as an app, as a thick client in a mobile phone.
No,
Yeah, in mobile, I think UiPath here. So I think on forum there's a link where even Cohen, I think is the product manager of UiPath apps. He has posted a link where you can create an Android APK for your UiPath apps. But I can't find that link right now. But if
Yeah,
I find it, I will
please
definitely
do.
share it to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very.
but that's the same thing that I was also referring to. I
Yeah,
cannot
yeah,
remember the link.
yeah. Even I can't find that link right now. I'm
Yeah.
searching only while we are talking.
like all the team members are talking here itself. Parth has the answer for this. Probably you will make another video short. Okay, guys, we are just on top of the hours. I really want to go ahead and ask others if they have a questions quickly to ask for it and be open about it. But before I go ahead and let people go, because I can't restrict people to leave now, do register for uh, rework rework work festival, which is on the 15th, 16th, and 17th. We pasted the registration link here. I also want to go ahead and inform you guys that there's an MVP program launched for the fiscal new year. Please look out for that information and see where you can go ahead and be part of the community. And the third thing which I want to talk about is vote for Vibor and vote for UiPath community. The post is already up on LinkedIn and other common platform. If you are not aware, just ping us. We will give you the link to vote.
आप पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर रहे उदित?
No,
हम भी वोट करते हैं कहीं?
probably we don't want to compete between me and Vibor. Further questions, please. About the background noise.